In the Name of the Tsar is the second DLC for Battlefield 1, focusing on the Russian side of the conflict. With 6 new maps, a ton of new weapons, a couple new vehicles, is this expansion worth the price of admission? So let's start with the maps, which are kind of the meat core experience of the game. This one is a little bit less consistent, I would say, than They Shall Not Pass, and as a result, it really drags this DLC down. There's some maps that are absolutely incredible in this expansion, but there's also some really, really bad ones that are complete dumpster fires. So first off, you've got Tsar which I think is honestly one of the worst maps in the entirety of Battlefield 1. It's a map that's designed around controlling a cathedral in the middle, which is almost impossible to take because it's so difficult to get in there. There's just so many choke points, and it's just an absolute clusterfuck, basically. And for the most part, it comes down to whether or not, in Conquest at least, if you can circle around your opponent and grab their main base and then try and force them out that way through knocking down their ticks. And it's just not a fun map to play at all. One of the worst things about it is that there's not a lot of replayability. It plays out the same way either time. You either come through, you go left, right, or the center into the cathedral, which almost nobody does because it's going to be a complete death trap. So you basically just try and go around the side, capture the back cap, and then force them out. It's just super boring to do that over and over and over again. And by the end of each match on this map, I'm just completely sick of it. I cannot stand it. It's just such a boring map. Next up, you've got Volga River, which I think honestly stacks up as one of the best maps in the entirety of Battlefield 1. It is an amazing tank map that I had a lot of fun playing with friends as we drove around a land ship trying to blow up other tanks and stuff like that. You've got a decent amount of tanks on either side, so you can have a lot of tank fights. It's pretty flat plains for the most part, but there's a lot of cover and holes from craters of artillery shells and stuff like that that infantry can get into, so it's not like they're just going to get picked off or anything like that. It's not completely flat by any means. And so it does make it very fun for infantry as well. There's a lot of ways you can hide and attack the tanks, and there's a lot of different ways that the infantry can attack the different points as well. And then you've got Tubko Pass, which is a pretty fun map in Conquest, I gotta say. It's got flying, so if you do enjoy flying, you can do that. And there's a decent amount of room, so you can fly around, have some dogfights, and do some bombing runs. It's kind of a bit of a sniper hell, though, I have to say, because there's basically a giant hill in the center of the map, and then there's a ring of points that go around it. And so some snipers will sit up there and just try and pick people off as they're going to grab the other ring of points around it. And that's kind of a way that you can kind of flank around it if you want to get out of the clusterfuck. Because otherwise, if you try and go up the point, it's just people everywhere blasting and things just exploding. It's craziness up there. And it's an absolute meat grinder, to say the least. But it is a really fun map to play in Conquest, I do have to say. It's not as good as some of the other ones in this expansion, but it's definitely up there as being a good map. Next up is Albion, which is my favorite map of this expansion and honestly might be one of my favorite maps in the entirety of the game. It is so much fun to play on. And this map really gives you a view of what it might be like if we finally get a World War II battlefield and get like a D-Day mission or something like that. Because basically Albion is, you've got a string of different islands that are connected with little bridges and stuff like that. And then one team starts at one end where they have to run across land. They have 2 boats that they can take with torpedoes on them to go try and sink other boats and stuff like that. Otherwise, they can just run up and try and claim the points along the island. And then the other side spawns on boats, and then they have to go and siege the points, kind of D-Day style. It's really cool. You get to take little boats up there. There's a whole new type of boat, too, that wasn't in the original game. You've got the regular torpedo boat that's in the regular game, but you've also got this new one that looks like kind of this Saving Private Ryan style boat. You sort of drive up, and there's got a little door that comes down, and then people flush out. It's really cool. And this is just a really fun map. There's a lot to do in it. There's a lot of different points, a lot of variety. You can fly around on it. It's really cool when the ship, the Dreadnought, comes out, and then you've got boats driving around trying to torpedo it and stuff like that. It is such a cool map. There's also 2 coastal guns that you can capture and repair, and then blast either the ship or other people running by. It's just a really fun map that I really, really enjoy. It's great fun. Next up, you've got Galicia, which can be kind of a hit or miss map depending on what you like and what you're into. This map is pretty fun. It looks pretty cool, and it's really great if you like to fly like myself, because there's a lot of areas you can bomb. Infantry can't really hide from you that well, and it's really fun for dogfighting because it's very big. But where this map really falls apart is in its actual terrain design, because it's just a completely flat map for the most part. And so snipers can just hit you from all over the place, and there's not a whole lot of cover. There's like a couple handful of windmills, there's some trenches and ditches, and then you've got some buildings at the sea point. But other than that, it's just kind of open ground, open season for the snipers to just take you out. On top of that, I really think this map suffers from not having another point, especially in Conquest, because Basically, you've got A, B, C, D, and C's really far off, and so everyone kind of has to funnel that way towards it. And there's just not really a whole lot of incentive to go the other way. And so it can kind of make the map feel a little bit repetitive because you're kind of going from A to B to C, or from E to D to C, basically, unless you're going to take a vehicle and try and drive around and backcap the other point. It's just kind of annoying in that way. It's just not as fresh feeling. It can very much feel repetitive. And then you've got Brusilov Keep, which is honestly a pretty bad map. It's very repetitive. There's not a whole lot you can do in it. There's just a river in the middle, and then you kind of just fight over that and try and take the other points. It's just a complete clusterfuck a lot of times. And there's one artillery truck per team. There's not really any vehicles, and so if you're into that, it's not very fun to play on. And then you just get pounded by that if they take like the mortar one or something like that. So it's just not very fun. It's also kind of a sniper hell in some ways too, much like some of the other maps in this expansion. And as far as new vehicles go, you've got 3 new ones. There's the heavily armored car, which is honestly not that great. You can really only use it on Galicia, and at that point, you're pretty much just going to get destroyed by an artillery truck that's pounding the crap out of you. It's a cool vehicle, but you're just not going to get a whole lot of value out of it, and it's not really that usable. There's also that landing craft I told you about earlier where you drive it up and the doors come down. And then you have my favorite new vehicle, which is the Heavy Bomber. So if you love flying, you've got this sweet new bomber that is honestly way better than the original bomber. You got these massive bombs you can drop, and so you can just fly over and carpet bomb an area. It looks really cool when you're looking down. It's kind of like that old school footage you'd see of war where like a B-52 bomber just flies over and blows the crap out of everything. It's really cool in that way. And you've also got these really nice, powerful machine guns that the gunners can use to pound infantry, kind of AC-130 style, which is really cool. And then there's even a 4th seat in the aircraft, so somebody can literally be sitting in there because it doesn't have an actual gun for its own, and somebody can sit there and repair your aircraft, which is hilarious. But it's honestly kind of a little bit imbalanced, and I think it probably will at some point need to be tweaked because it is really strong. You can survive a retarded amount of anti-aircraft with somebody just sitting there repairing as you're flying. You also get 2 new operations and a new game mode called Supply, which honestly is pretty dead. I had a really hard time finding an actual game for it, and I can see why it's just not really that fun. As far as the new operations go, they're all right. They're pretty much a meat grinder like the rest of operations are. Galicia in particular isn't really that fun to play as an operation because it's like a sniper hell, and there's not a whole lot of room to really move around, so you just get pounded and pounded and pounded into oblivion. It's just, I don't know, they're okay, they're just not really that great. I wouldn't really recommend them that much over playing like traditional Conquest. And then you've got the new cavalry lances, which are okay. They're quite a bit weaker though than the swords, but they are something different if you want to try it out. Overall, is In the Name of the Tsar worth it? Yes. If I had to rate it on a score scale, I'd say that this is an 8 out of 10 and Nation Let Pass is a 9 out of 10. This one is just slightly worse than it because the maps just are much more inconsistent in quality, which is a shame because there's some maps like Albion and Volga River that are really dang good. But it just doesn't match up as much. And when you're playing through the entirety of the map pool on one server, you're going to have a couple moments where you're just like, sigh, crap, it's this map again. We're playing Brusilov Keep. But that isn't to say it drags down the entire experience. I did enjoy myself playing In the Name of the Tsar, and I'll definitely be playing a lot more of it going forward.